At my dad's funeral, they told me to stay in the back. No hugs, no sorry for your loss, nothing, just cold eyes and a harsh whisper. This is a family matter. So, I didn't argue. I sat quietly, alone. But while they stood there, pretending to cry, acting like they cared, I held something they didn't know about, a letter from my father. And by the time they found out, it was already too late. They lost everything. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and please tell me and others, what's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late? Share it in the comments below. Thanks. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Luna Hayes. I'm 60 years old, and today, at my own father's funeral, it felt like my family buried me too. I walked into the chapel wearing an old black coat I hadn't touched in years. The service had just started, but I didn't even make it 5 steps before my sister, Brenda, blocked my way like a guard. Her voice was sharp and low as she said, "Stay away. This is a family matter." I looked at her, waiting for a smirk or some kind of joke, but there was none. She meant it. My brother Mark was beside her, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes on the floor. He couldn't even look at me. I nodded. What else could I do? I slipped around them and found a seat in the back, hidden behind a tall man whose shoulders blocked most of the view. That was fine. I wasn't there to be seen anyway. The room was full of people I recognized, old neighbors, my dad's co-workers, people who used to come over for dinner, but not a single one of them looked my way. The casket at the front was polished and dark, like something out of a museum, with lilies on top. Lilies, the one flower my dad couldn't stand. They gave him migraines. But no one remembered that except me. 3 rows from the front, I spotted my daughter, Tessa. She was sitting next to Brenda's oldest, looking so grown up, beautiful, serious, distant. She didn't look back. Not when I walked in, not during the service, not even when the pastor read out my dad's children and skipped my name entirely. I wanted to believe she hadn't seen me, that she didn't know I was there. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. It wasn't a mistake. It was on purpose. The pastor talked about my dad like he was a saint, about his loyalty, his discipline, his strong values. It all sounded nice if you didn't grow up in his house. But if you did, you knew what those words really meant. Silence, strict rules, and the way he could break your spirit with just a look or one cold sentence. I sat there, fists tight in my coat pockets, trying not to cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because I'd spent too many years learning how to look strong, even when I was falling apart. After the service, everyone moved into the reception room. Dry cookies, cheap coffee. I poured myself a cup and stood near the photo board. There were pictures of my dad with Brenda's kids, fishing with Mark, laughing at family holidays. But not one single picture of me, not even when I was little. I looked harder, hoping I missed something. I hadn't. They had erased me like I was never part of the family. I was about to leave when I felt a tap on my arm. I turned around and saw an older man I didn't know. Tall, thin, probably in his 70s, with kind eyes and a little navy pin on his coat. "Luna Hayes?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me a small envelope. "Your father told me to give you this. He was very clear, no one else." I blinked. "Do I know you?" "All the people he could count on. He could count on you," he said. "Name's Whitaker. We served together." He didn't trust many people, but he trusted you. Before I could say anything else, he turned and walked away, vanishing into the crowd like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on my whole day. I didn't open the letter in the church. I waited until I got to my car 2 blocks away. The heat was blasting. My hands were shaking. I finally opened the envelope. It was short, written in my dad's familiar, stiff handwriting. "No, dear Luna, no warmth. Just the facts. Luna, this family will shut you out. I've done what I could to make it right. Go to First Federal Bank on 8th. Ask for box 19. Trust only Dawn. Keep this quiet." That was it. No love. No, I'm sorry. But still, it was more than I'd gotten from him in years. And it meant something. Because even though he never said the words out loud, he picked me. Not them. Me. I stared at the church through my windshield and whispered, "You wanted me gone." But he didn't. And my family, they had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the letter in front of me, reading it over and over like the words might change. But they didn't. It was his voice, distant, serious, but this time, it was speaking directly to me. He hadn't said a word to me in over 10 years, and now, here he was, giving me instructions like no time had passed. I thought about calling Tessa. Maybe just to say something small, like, "Did you make it home okay?" But I didn't. What would I even say? That her grandfather, the same man who shut me out most of my life, suddenly trusted me with something big. She wouldn't believe me. Honestly, I could hardly believe it myself. By the time the sun came up, I was still sitting at the kitchen table. I hadn't moved. Same clothes, same chair, still holding that envelope like it might disappear if I blinked. I was exhausted, but something inside me wouldn't let go. My gut was screaming that whatever was in that safety deposit box, it was important, maybe even life-changing. I finally got up, splashed cold water on my face, threw on a pair of jeans and a sweater, and grabbed my keys. I didn't want to go. I didn't trust any of it, but I had to. I needed answers. The First Federal Bank on 8th looked exactly like I remembered. Green awnings, brass door handles, that faint smell of old cigarette smoke from back in the 80s still lingered in the air. I walked in with the envelope tucked safely in my coat pocket, my hands freezing even though it was sunny outside. At the counter, a woman with silver glasses and a tight bun asked for my ID. Then she had me sign a thick old ledger before lending me through a heavy door into a room that looked like something out of a spy movie, quiet, dim, and cold like a vault. She handed me a small metal box labeled 19, then left me alone. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Inside was a black flash drive and a folded-up legal document sealed in plastic. I pulled out the document first. It had been notarized, signed by my father, and dated just 7 months ago. It was short and to the point. He was giving a parcel of land to me. Not Brenda, not Mark, just me. There was no address, just a reference number, but the message was crystal clear. And at the bottom, written in his own uneven handwriting, were the words, "Do not let them get this." I stared at that sentence like it was made of glass. My father, after all the years of shutting me out, letting the others pretend I didn't exist, had actually done something for me. Secretly, on purpose. And I had no idea what that piece of land even was. But I knew Brenda and Mark would lose their minds if they found out. Next, I picked up the flash drive. It had no label, just a plain black case. But holding it gave me a cold, uneasy feeling in my stomach. There was no way I was plugging that into my home computer, not with everything I already suspected about my family. I needed something safe, something clean. Before I could leave, I heard the vault door open. My heart dropped. I quickly shoved everything back into the box, sealed it shut, and slid it into its slot. Then I heard the voice, too familiar. "I told you she'd come here." It was Mark. I didn't wait. I slipped out the door as quietly as I could and walked fast down the hallway. I passed a manager who gave me a polite nod. I smiled like everything was normal, like I hadn't just heard my brother hunting me down. I made it to the parking lot and got into my car. I sat there, hands trembling on the steering wheel. How the hell did he know I was there? I didn't go home. I drove straight to a nearby tech repair shop and bought an old used laptop with cash. Something basic, cheap, and most importantly not connected to anything. Then I went to a coffee shop down the street, found a quiet corner near an outlet, and opened the laptop for the first time. No Wi-Fi, no updates. Perfect. I plugged in the flash drive. One folder popped up, for Luna. Inside were 6 video files and 1 PDF. I opened the PDF first. It was a scanned letter typed, signed by my father. "Luna, if you're seeing this, it means I couldn't stop what was coming. They'll try to twist everything. They'll try to take what they think they deserve, but they don't deserve it. You do. You always did. I should have told you that face to face." I stopped breathing for a second. Then I opened the first video. It was grainy, but clear enough. Brenda was standing in Dad's kitchen, whispering to Mark, "We need him to sign before he gets any worse." Mark nodded. "Once it's notarized, she won't have a leg to stand on. She doesn't even know about the new paperwork." Brenda smirked. "Let's keep it that way." I froze. They had planned this. They waited until he was confused, slipping, and used it to shut me out completely. But he must have figured it out. That's why he left the flash drive. That's why he gave me the document. He was trying to fix what they broke without them ever knowing. I packed up the laptop, stuffed it into my bag, and left the coffee shop without looking back. If Brenda and Mark knew I had been at that bank, then someone was watching me, and if they had already gone this far to lie and twist things, I had no idea what else they might do. But I knew one thing for sure. They underestimated me. They always did. The moment I got home, I locked every door, then double-checked all the windows. Maybe I was being paranoid, but hearing Mark's voice in that vault had flipped a switch inside me. This wasn't just about some piece of land anymore. This was war. I grabbed the old laptop and hid it in the kitchen pantry behind an old cereal box. Not exactly Fort Knox, but better than leaving it in plain sight. Then I went to the hallway closet and started digging through an old file cabinet, pulling out a dusty manila folder. I kept every scrap of paper my dad ever gave me. Birthday cards with barely a word inside, one-line notes, even a letter from 1999 where he said sorry for missing Tessa's kindergarten graduation. I didn't know what I was looking for. Really, I just started flipping through the old papers out of habit. And then, stuck between two pages, I found it, a tiny receipt. It was a property tax form from 2008. I wouldn't have thought much of it, except it had the same parcel number listed in that bank document. My hands shook as I picked up my phone and typed the number into the county website's property search tool. Up popped a tiny piece of land in Northridge, just outside Fairfield County. 10 acres of woods, no house, no buildings, just trees, dirt, and quiet. Worthless at least on paper. But if it was really worthless, why had Dad gone through all the trouble to hide it? I stared at the screen, trying to figure out what my father saw in that place. Then I thought about the videos Brenda and Mark whispering in the kitchen, rushing to get papers signed before he got worse. It wasn't just about the land. It was about what was on it, or maybe what it meant, whatever it was. I had to see it for myself. I packed a flashlight, gloves, and a notebook like I was going camping, and hit the road before I could talk myself out of it. The land was about 45 minutes away, just off a narrow back road, surrounded by trees and silence. I pulled off to the side and parked, then climbed through a rusty old metal gate tied shut with a piece of frayed twine. It looked like no one had been there in years. Branches were scattered everywhere. Muddy tire tracks had long since faded. I followed a narrow trail up a hill until I reached a clearing, and that's when I saw it almost hidden under a huge pine tree. A shed, or at least what used to be one. Its roof had caved in. Slats were broken, and moss climbed halfway up one wall. I stepped inside carefully, my boots crunching over old glass and dead leaves. In the far corner, something looked off, a square patch of dirt to clean, like it had been disturbed. Recently, I crouched down and brushed away the top layer of dirt. My fingers hit something solid, metal. I dug deeper and pulled out a small lockbox. Old, rusted, still sealed shut. No name, no key, no clue what was inside. But I knew one thing. It wasn't meant for Brenda, or Mark, or anyone else in that family. It was meant for me. I tucked it into my bag, heart pounding, and headed straight home. I didn't see anyone behind me, but that didn't stop me from checking my mirrors every few seconds. Back in my kitchen, I dropped the box on the table. I didn't have a key, but I had a screwdriver and a hammer. It took some efforts and a few whispered curses, but I finally pried it open. Inside was a single velvet pouch and a folded piece of paper. I opened the pouch first. My breath caught. It was my grandfather's gold pocket watch. I thought it had been lost decades ago. I remember Dad used to wear it on holidays, tucked into his vest like it was a piece of history, and here it was, still ticking, still perfect. Then I opened the note, his handwriting again. Luna, if you found this, it means you kept going. This land was never about money. It was about you, about me doing something right for once. The pocket watch was your grandfather's. He told me to give it to you when the time was right. I just never knew how. Keep it safe. And Luna, be careful. They're not done. I sat at the table for a long time, the light outside starting to fade, just staring at that letter. He hadn't been a soft man, not kind, not warm, but this was different. This was him trying to fix what he'd broken, quietly, in pieces, after he was already gone. But that last line hit hard. They're not done. I looked down at the pocket watch in my hand, the ticking suddenly eerie, my skin prickled. He wasn't talking about time, he was talking about them. The next morning, the silence in the house felt wrong, not peaceful off, like the kind of quiet you get right before something goes wrong. I hadn't slept, just stared at the ceiling all night, the watch ticking softly on my nightstand like it was keeping track of something I couldn't see. I kept thinking about everything. The videos, the land, the lockbox, the pocket watch, and especially that warning. They're not done. My father knew what Brenda and Mark were capable of. He raised them. He knew. I thought about Brenda's voice on the video again. Get it signed before he slips, like it was a deadline, not a moment of concern. Now I had something they wanted. Proof, property, maybe just the truth, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they came looking. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the laptop again. I watched the first video, then the second. This one showed Mark pacing in the backyard, phone to his ear. She won't come back, he said. She knows she's out. Just leave it. If she shows up, we deal with it then. I paused the video. Deal with it. What did that even mean? I didn't like the way it sounded. And I really didn't like that he was wrong, because I had shown up. And this time, I wasn't going anywhere. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not rushed, just a soft knock, like someone dropping off a package or returning a shovel. But my stomach dropped anyway. Looked through the peephole. Tessa. She stood there with her hands shoved into her coat pockets, eyes glancing behind her like she wasn't sure she should be here. I opened the door slowly, left the chain on Tessa. She looked up at me and gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Can I come in? I hesitated. Then, slowly, I closed the door, unhooked the chain, and opened it again. Tessa stepped inside without saying another word. Her eyes scanned the room like she was trying to notice everything that had changed since the last time she was here. She walked over to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. You okay? She finally asked. I nodded. I'm fine. Why? She shrugged. You left the service so fast. And Brenda's been calling me non-stop, asking if I've talked to you. That didn't surprise me, but it still made my chest tighten. Well, I said flatly, you can tell her I'm still breathing. Tessa let out a quiet laugh. Then she looked down at the floor. She's been saying some stuff about you showing up at the bank, about documents. I kept my face still. Is that why you're here? To see if I've got something you can bring back to them? Her head snapped up. No. God, no. I wanted to hear it from you. I don't even know what's going on. Brenda's just being Brenda. Controlling, weird. She keeps saying, there's a plan, but no one's telling me anything. I studied her face. She looked tired, frustrated. And if she was lying, she was doing a much better job than the rest of them ever had. There was a box, I said quietly, at the bank, with a letter and a deed. Your grandfather left it for me, privately. He didn't trust the rest of them. Tessa's eyes flicked toward the bag sitting near the table. What kind of deed? I hesitated. To land. 10 acres in Northridge. She let out a long, slow breath. And that's it. I didn't answer. She looked at me again. Mom, you know they're going to come after you, right? If there's property and paperwork, they're going to try to bury you in court. I know, I said. There was a pause. A long one. Just enough to make me think for a second that maybe we were really connecting, that maybe she was here for me, not them. Then she straightened. Her hand slid into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She casually tucked it into her back jeans pocket. And that's when I saw it. A tiny blinking light. Recording. My stomach dropped. You're recording me, I said. My voice suddenly cold and low. Tessa froze. Her whole face shifted, guilt spread across it like a stain. It's not. Brenda just said if I could get you to say something, to admit something, to make you seem crazy, I asked. My voice was shaking, not from fear, from something colder, something deeper. Mom, I didn't mean, she started. Save it, I snapped. Get out. She stepped back, eyes wide, panic creeping into her voice. Please, just listen. No, Tessa. I said her name like a warning. She backed toward the door, hands raised like I was going to hurt her. I didn't say another word. I opened the door and stood there, waiting. She left silent. I slammed the door shut behind her and locked it. Then I locked it again. I stood there for a full minute, breathing hard, trying to process what had just happened. My own daughter, wired, sent by Brenda, like some spy in a cheap crime drama. And the worst part, for a second I had believed her. I walked back into the kitchen and opened the laptop. I clicked on the next video from the flash drive. Brenda's voice came through, sharp and smug. If we get her to admit she's hiding anything, we're golden. Tessa's working on it. The screen went black. And just like that, Whatever tiny part of me still hoped this was all just a misunderstanding, it died. They weren't just planning to push me out. They were already doing it. I didn't leave the house the rest of the day. My chest felt like it was filled with wet cement, every breath heavy, every thought thick and slow. After Tessa left I caught that flash of guilt in her eyes, and still slammed the door anyway. Didn't even cry. I just went still, cold, like something inside me had snapped back into place. Trust, I hadn't even realized it was still alive in me, until it finally broke. I sat at the table for hours. The flash drive sat on the old tablecloth next to my untouched cup of tea. I didn't even have the strength to be angry. Anger takes heat, takes fire, and I felt hollow, quiet, but not broken. Eventually, I powered on the second-hand laptop again. There were still 2 more videos on the flash drive I hadn't seen. I clicked the next one. The screen lit up. My father's living room. The video was from a camera hidden near the bookshelf. Brenda sat on the couch scribbling in a folder. Mark stood by the window, fidgeting just like he always did when he was nervous. "He's not lucid anymore," Mark said, running a hand through his hair. "Half the time he thinks we're still in the 80s. We need to finish the paperwork this week." "He's signing it," Brenda replied, without even looking up. "I've got the notary lined up. It's fine." "And what if Luna shows up?" Mark asked. Brenda shrugged. "She won't. Tess is going to feel her out. If there's anything to dig up, we'll know." I paused the video and closed my eyes. It wasn't just about pushing me aside. They were using Tessa, my daughter, as a tool, a trap. My own child, weaponized against me. All over what? Land, money, control. I opened the last file. This time, it was my father, alone. He was slouched in his recliner, gray and thin, but his eyes were sharp. Sharper than I'd seen them in years. He looked straight into the camera. His voice was low, a little raspy but steady. "If you're watching this, Luna, then you figured it out. Or maybe you didn't. But either way, I couldn't let them have everything. I didn't fix things between us. Not the way I should have. Not face to face I should have." The video continued. "I let too many years pass. But I saw who they became. And I saw what you became too. Strong, stubborn, just like your mother." My throat tightened. "Batland," he went on, "was always meant to be yours. I kept it out of the estate so they couldn't touch it. Kept it out of the will too. I knew they'd tear each other apart over what was left, but I didn't want them dragging you down with them." Then, his voice lowered, slow, steady, serious. "Don't trust them, Luna. Don't give them anything, not even a phone call." I watched it twice. Then, a third time. He hadn't said my name with warmth exactly, but he'd said it with weight, like it meant something. Like I meant something. And that mattered more than any apology he never gave. I copied all the videos to a second flash drive and sealed it in a Ziploc bag. I lifted a loose floorboard in my bedroom closet and tucked it underneath, then erased everything from the original drive. Whatever happened next, I needed to be smart, careful. That drive was the only proof I had, and I couldn't risk losing it. Around sunset, I stepped outside to check the mailbox just out of habit. I wasn't expecting anything, but there it was. A plain white envelope. No name, no return address. My stomach turned. I opened it right there on the porch. One sheet of paper, typed, "Stop digging. Or the truth won't be the only thing buried." No signature, no fingerprints, nothing to trace. Just a threat. I stood there frozen, scanning the street. Everything looked normal to normal. Kids playing, cars parked like always, a dog barking in the distance. But suddenly, the whole world felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in. I went back inside, locked the door, then drew every blind in the house. Whoever sent that note, they either knew what I had, or they thought I did. Either way, the pressure was on. I sat at the table, opened a fresh notebook, and started writing. Every detail I could remember: dates, times, what was said in the videos, when I got the letter, when Tessa showed up. I wasn't going to rely on memory anymore. I was building a timeline. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. But this time, I'd be ready. The next morning felt the same. Silent, but not peaceful. The kind of silence that presses down on your chest and won't let go. I hadn't slept. Just sat up all night, flipping through that notebook, adding notes, piecing together the timeline like I was prepping for trial. That note from the mailbox haunted me. No handwriting, no postmark, no way to trace it, but the timing. That wasn't random. Someone knew, or at least suspected, that I had the videos, that I had proof, and now that I'd hidden the backup, the only thing I hadn't done was tell someone else about it. I wasn't ready yet. Not until I had the full picture. I decided to go back to the Northridge property. I had to check the shed again. There could be more, something I missed. Some clue my father had left behind to tie this all together. But when I opened the front door, my stomach dropped. My doormat was flipped upside down. The corner folded under like someone stepped on it, and didn't bother to fix it. It wasn't like that yesterday. I stepped outside, looked around. The street was quiet again. But my mailbox, hanging open. The latch snapped. I hadn't noticed that either. That feeling came rushing back. That tight squeeze in the chest, the dry throat, the voice in your head screaming something's wrong. I rushed back inside and checked every window, every back door. No glass broken, nothing obvious, until I walked into my bedroom. The closet door was cracked open. I know I didn't leave it like that. I dropped to the floor, ripped up the loose board, my hiding spot. Gone. The plastic bag, the second flash drive, everything. I just knelt there, blinking, numb. Someone had been inside my house, and they didn't care about the TV or my wallet. They came for one thing, the one thing they couldn't afford for me to have. I stood up, locked every door again. Then, without even thinking, I called Don Whitaker. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was groggy, but sharp. "Luna, I need to meet," I said. "Now, somewhere quiet." We picked a small diner just outside of town, the kind of place that hadn't changed a single thing since the 90s. I got there early and sat in a booth in the back, facing the door. I didn't bring the laptop. No flash drives, no papers, just me. Don arrived 10 minutes later, still in his old Navy jacket. His eyes were tired, but clear. "You okay?" he asked as he slid into the booth. "No," I said. "They broke into my house. They found the backup. It's gone." He didn't flinch, just took a sip of coffee, like he'd seen this coming all along. "I warned your father this might happen," he said. He wanted to believe they wouldn't go that far, but I knew better. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "How much did you know?" Don looked at me for a long second. Then he spoke. "Your father trusted me with a lot. Told me about the land, the documents, the videos. Said he didn't trust the lawyers. Didn't trust Brenda or Mark. Said he wished he'd raised them different. Said he regretted what he did to you." I swallowed hard. That wasn't something I was expecting to hear. That wasn't something I ever expected to hear. He didn't say those kinds of things in his letters. He never really knew how. Don looked at me gently. He wasn't great with words, but he was good at protecting things. That's how he showed love. He hid those things from them, so you could have something they couldn't touch. I blinked back, the sting in my eyes. "But you were supposed to find that box after they stopped looking," Don added. "Now they're panicking. They know you have something." "Had," I corrected quietly. "They took it." Don leaned back, thoughtful. "You still have your father's letter?" I nodded. "Yeah. And a copy of the deed. But that's it. The videos, the backup, gone." He glanced around the diner, then lowered his voice. He made another copy. Not videos this time. Written notes, journals, a full account of everything that happened that year. It wouldn't hold up in court, but it's still proof. It's buried in a property trust file under a name only he and I knew. "I'll get it to you." I stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" He gave a small, tired smile. "Because your father asked me to. And because I've seen what greed does to people. You're the only one in that family who didn't take from him while he was alive. That matters." I nodded slowly, trying to hold myself together, but the adrenaline was starting to wear off, and what came after was heavier. Not fear, not anger, grief, not just for the father I lost, but for the parts of him I never got to know until now. Don stood up, left a few bills on the table, and gently placed a hand on my shoulder before heading out. "They're not done, Luna," he said. "But neither are you." I stayed in that booth for another 20 minutes, watching the door like a soldier on patrol, not just the black sheep anymore. Now I was a target. The next morning I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee growing cold in front of me. I stared out the window, waiting, expecting movement. A car that didn't belong. A shadow that shouldn't be there. Something. I hadn't slept. Every tiny sound the house made, the fridge kicking on, the wind tapping at the glass, my heart racing. Brenda and Mark had broken into my house. They'd stolen the flash drive without leaving a single sign that told me everything I needed to know. They had help. Maybe legal help. Maybe technical. Maybe even someone on the inside. I was done playing defense. Before 9 a.m., I called Don. "I want that file you mentioned," I told him. Today, he didn't argue. Just gave me an address to Matan old storage facility on the edge of town. I got there early, parked between two rusted-out trucks, and waited. When Don arrived, he was carrying a thick manila envelope so stuffed it looked like it could hold a novel. He handed it to me without a word. Inside were copies of handwritten notes, letters, and my breath caught a second will, dated, signed, and notarized just 7 months before my father died. And the name listed as the sole heir. Mine. "This changes everything," I whispered, flipping through the pages. "It contradicts the will they read at the funeral," Don said, nodding, "because Brenda had that one drawn up later. She told the lawyer your father was slipping, claimed he asked to make changes, even brought in a witness, some friend of Mark's. But this one's real," he added. "I was there when he signed it." I looked down at the paper in my hands, trying to slow my breathing. "So what do I do? Just drop this on a lawyer's desk and wait for them to scream?" He shook his head. "No. First, you make copies. Get it certified. Protect yourself, because once they know you have this, they'll stop pretending." I did exactly what he said. I drove straight to a print shop, scanned every page, had a notary confirm the signature match with archived records. Then I hid the copies in 3 separate places. One in my neighbor Diane's safe, one in a locker at the Greyhound station, and one buried in a waterproof bag under the rose bushes in my backyard. Maybe it was over the top, paranoid, but I wasn't taking any more chances. That night, I finally let myself cry. Not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel completely alone. My father had done something good, quietly, clumsily, but good, and someone besides me had seen it. The next morning, I drove to the office of a local estate attorney, Carla Jensen. She had a reputation in town, tough, smart, nonsense. I didn't call ahead. I just walked in and handed her assistant a sealed envelope marked urgent, inheritance, fraught. Within 20 minutes, Carla called me back to her office. "Start from the beginning," she said. So I did. Everything. The letter, the videos, the stolen flash drive, the second will, Tessa's visit, the threat in my mailbox. She listened carefully, without interrupting, then leaned back in her chair. "This is big," she said. "You know that, right? If this second will holds up in court, it doesn't just change the estate, it proves intent, fraud, possibly even criminal charges." "I know," I said, "but I don't want chaos. No ambushes, just the truth." Carla nodded slowly. "We'll file a petition to challenge the current will. That'll trigger discovery. And if your siblings push back, which they will, it's going to get loud. Are you ready for that?" I didn't even pause. "They already broke into my house. They used my daughter against me. I'm way past ready." She smirked, just a little. "Good, because people like Brenda, they don't go down quiet." When I stepped outside her office, the air felt different, lighter. For the first time in this whole storm, I wasn't just surviving. I was fighting back with facts, with the law, with truth. I had the will, the documents, the lawyer, and nothing left to lose. But as I pulled into my driveway, I noticed it the moment I pulled into the driveway. The garbage can I'd left out by the curb that morning was back beside the house. I hadn't touched it. No one should have touched it. I got out slowly, keys threaded between my fingers, like makeshift brass knuckles, and walked around to the side of the house. The back gate was cracked open. My tool shed door hung slightly ajar. I didn't even go inside. I didn't have to dot. My heart was already hammering. I knew what it meant. They knew, and now that I had the real will, they weren't going to wait quietly for court. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the wind brushing against the windows, felt louder, sharper. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat across my lap like I was guarding a fortress. I wasn't just trying to protect myself. I was trying to protect the last thing I still had that hadn't already been taken. The truth. The next morning, Carla called. "We've filed the petition," she said, "but the court's going to need something else. Someone who can verify the second will. A notary, a witness. Anyone who can speak to your father's intent." There was only one name listed on the second will, Walter Grimm. I remembered him quiet, balding, always looked half asleep, but he'd handled small-town wills for decades, including my father's. Carla had tried to reach him, but his office number was disconnected. No online listing, no forwarding address. I'll find him, I said. Don't worry. Just give me 10 days. I drove straight to his old office, tucked into a half-dead strip mall between a vape shop and a nail salon. The sign was still up, Grimm and Associates, but the windows were dark. I knocked anyway. Nothing. Next door, I asked the bored girl behind the vape counter if she remembered him. She looked up from her phone, perked up at the name. Oh yeah, old guy. Moved to Florida, or wait, maybe, just across town. His daughter cleaned the place out in one weekend. I think she left something on the door. She was right. On the peeling back panel of the door was a faded sticker. Property transfer, Grimm to Keller, 142W Main. Apt 3A. It wasn't Florida. It was local. I drove straight there. The building was worn, but clean, small mailboxes, an old staircase with faded carpet. I knocked on 3A, unsure of what I'd find. A woman in her 20s opened the door. She looked cautious, but polite. I'm looking for Walter Grimm, I said. I was told he might have retired recently. He's my father, she said. But he's not practicing anymore. He's not, well, I don't need him to take a case. I just need to ask about something he signed. My father's will. She studied me, then opened the door wider. Come in. The apartment was small and quiet. Books lined the walls. The faint smell of peppermint tea lingered in the air. Walter sat in a recliner by the window thinner. Then I remembered. Older, slower, but his eyes still held something. Steady, he looked up at me and blinked. Luna Hayes, he said, not a question. A memory. My throat caught. You remember me? He nodded once. Your father was a proud man, hard to like, but he trusted you. I sat across from him and carefully pulled out a copy of the second will. You signed this with him 7 months ago, I said. Walter took the paper in his shaking hands, studied it carefully, and nodded again. He came to me quietly. He said, didn't want the others to know. Told me everything they were trying to do. I signed it myself. No assistant. Just him and me. Would you be willing to say that in court? Before he could answer, his daughter stepped in. He's not well enough to testify, but I have his journal. He kept notes. Every client, every meeting. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a slim, leather-bound book. She opened it to a page marked Hayes, March 12th, and handed it to me. Inside was everything. Why my father changed the will. Why he left the land to me. How he feared Brenda and Mark were planning something. It wasn't just notes. It was a confession. I thanked them both and promised to keep their names out of it unless absolutely necessary. As I turned to leave, Walter spoke one last time, his voice thin but clear. Your father said something before he left that day. He said, I wasn't good at love, but I was good at protecting. I hope she understands the difference. I stood there in the hallway, barely breathing, eyes burning. I did understand. Maybe not back then, maybe not even most of my life, but now I did. The morning of the hearing, I woke up before sunrise. I'd already laid out my clothes the night before. Simple black slacks, a clean blouse, no jewelry, nothing flashy. Just the gold pocket watch, tucked quietly into the bottom of my bag. I didn't want to look wealthy. I wanted to look real, credible, truthful, because I wasn't just fighting for land. I was fighting for the part of my life that they had tried to erase. And I wasn't backing down when I saw it. A single manila envelope tucked into the base of the thorns, no stamp, no markings, just my name written in thick black pen. Luna. I stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. My heart beat loud in my ears as I opened it right there in the yard. Inside was a photograph of me, standing at the bank. From weeks ago, it had been taken from across the street, zoomed in, grainy but unmistakably me. Below, it was a handwritten note in block letters. Drop the case. Final warning. I didn't move, didn't blink. I felt the shears still in my hand, sharp and suddenly too heavy. They were still watching, still desperate, and now, cornered. I brought the photo inside, slid it into a folder marked threats because that's what it was, and called Carla. I need extra security at the courthouse, I said, and I want it on the record. They're escalating. She didn't ask questions. She just said, copy it. Scan it. I'll file the rest. The morning of the final hearing, I woke before dawn again, not from nerves this time but from clarity. I wasn't the same woman who'd sat in her kitchen clutching an envelope like it might disappear. I wasn't scared anymore. I was steady. I wore the same black slacks, the same clean blouse, no jewelry, just the watch my grandfather stuck into the inside pocket of my coat, ticking quietly like a promise. I arrived at the courthouse early. The sky still carried the gray-blue haze of early light. When I walked in, they were already there. Brenda in another perfect blazer. Mark, pacing this time, jaw tight. Tessa didn't come. The hearing began, promptly. This time, there was no small talk, no performance, just facts. Carla presented the second will again, now backed by Walter's affidavit, his daughter's journal, and a certified forensic report confirming the signature matched Henry Hayes's historical handwriting samples. Then she called Walter's daughter to the stand. She testified clearly, directly. She verified the journal, the meeting, and her father's mental state. She confirmed that he had said outright he didn't trust the rest of the family, only Luna. When the judge asked if she believed her father would stand by that decision today, she didn't hesitate. Yes, Your Honor, without question. Brenda's lawyer stood but offered nothing, knew just vague insinuations and flimsy attempts to discredit Walter's capacity. The judge barely looked up from her notes. Then came closing remarks. Carla kept it short. This case isn't just about property. It's about intent. And intent is crystal clear. The judge didn't rule right away. She took it under advisement, said she'd deliver the decision in writing within 72 hours. But I already knew. So did they. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen when the email came in from Carla. Subject, judgment entered. I opened it with trembling fingers. The court finds sufficient evidence that the second will dated 7 months prior to Mr. Hayes's death was valid and lawfully executed. The previous document is vacated. Sole heir designation stands. Probate will proceed accordingly. I read it twice, then I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not angry or triumphant, just relief. Pure, full-body relief that felt like air returning to my lungs after months underwater. They had tried everything. Lies, manipulation, surveillance, even my own daughter. But in the end, the truth held. I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a party. I just went out to the backyard that night with a small chair, a cup of tea, and the pocket watch ticking in my palm. The moon was bright. The roses rustled softly in the wind. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt free. I heard the sound of gravel crunching and turned around. Tessa was standing by the fence. She looked different, tired, like someone who had been carrying too much for too long. She didn't come any closer. "I'm not here to fight," she said softly. I just, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't say anything. I waited. She looked down at her hands. "Brenda told me you were trying to take everything, that you never really cared about Grandpa." And I believed her, because it was easier, because I was mad at you. "You didn't believe me when I told you the truth," I said. "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I messed up." We stood there in silence. It stretched between us, but it didn't feel cold. It felt real. After a while, I gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was something close. On the day of the final court hearing, I walked into the courtroom with Carla beside me, head held high. Brenda and Mark were already there, whispering in a panic to their new lawyer. They'd fired the last one after Tessa's testimony backfired. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. The fear on their faces said more than words ever could. Carla laid everything out. The will, the journal, Walter's sworn statement, and even the audio recordings. She didn't just present the facts, she told the full story. Even the judge looked disturbed by the truth. Then came Carla's closing argument, sharp and clear. My client wasn't just denied what her father left her, she was almost erased. This wasn't a mistake, it was fraud. Lies covered up on purpose. "We're asking the court to honor Henry Hayes's final wishes and return what was stolen." Brenda's lawyer tried to twist things, saying it was all a big mix-up or that I somehow influenced a dying man's mind. But it didn't work. Not with all the evidence laid bare. Not with the truth finally out in the open. The judge took an hour to decide. When she came back, her voice was calm but firm. "This court recognizes the March 12th will. Any other version is invalid. Full control of parcel 387 and all connected assets is given to Luna Hayes, effective immediately. Further investigation into Brenda Cooper and Mark Hayes is recommended and will be sent to the district attorney." Brenda gasped. Mark slammed his hand on the table, but it was done. Carla leaned in and whispered, "You just won everything." When we stepped outside, the sunlight felt different, sharper, like the whole world had shifted back into balance. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just stood there and breathed for the first time in years. In the days that followed, everything unraveled fast. Brenda's firm put her on leave. Mark's construction license was suspended. Tessa cut ties with both of them and started therapy, the one I helped her find. She wasn't magically healed, but she was trying. As for me, I took the deed, the will, and Grandpa's old pocket watch, and I drove out to that quiet, 10-acre stretch of land in Northridge. I stood in the clearing, the wind brushing past the trees, and I just listened. No noise, no lies, just peace. That land was mine now, and not because I fought harder, but because I didn't let them erase me. When people ask what happened, I tell them this: they told me to stay out of it, that it was a family matter, so I stayed quiet, and they lost. That's today's story. If it touched you, leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget, share your own life lesson in the comments below.